On behalf of Harvard Bookstore, I'm very pleased to welcome you to this evening's event with editors Ayesha Mattu and Nura Maznavi, as well as 4 of their contributors, presenting their new book, Salaam, Love, American Muslim Men on Love, Sex, and Intimacy.
So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about our first book, Love, Inshallah, The Secret Love Lives of American Muslim Women, which came out 2 years ago. And that book really started as a conversation between 2 friends, Ayesha and myself. We were living in San Francisco at the time, and over coffee talking about sort of the public perception of Muslim women, what we saw in the media, what we saw on TV. None of the women that we saw reflected the women that we knew in our lives. So there was this idea of Muslim women as oppressed and submissive and lacking agency over their own lives. And we really wanted to change that public perception. And so we decided that we were going to collect love stories because love is a universal emotion. It's something that connects us intimately, and it's something that people of all backgrounds can relate to, regardless of ethnic background, racial background, or faith background. So 2 years ago, the book came out. It was an incredible success. We got overwhelming support from both Muslims and non-Muslims. And one of the biggest groups of people that came up to us after the book was published were men. Now I'm going to turn it over to Ayesha to talk about all the men in our lives.
Assalamu alaikum, Boston. So when Nura says that they started coming up to us, what she really means is we began to be stalked by Muslim men wherever we went, dinner parties, on the street, emails. And they all asked us the same question: where are our stories? And our reaction was, please, that would be the shortest book in the world. Men don't talk about their feelings. But then we had to ask ourselves, as the requests kept coming in, is it that men don't talk about their feelings, or is it that they don't have the space to talk about their feelings? And on one level, it sounds completely absurd to say men don't have space, because from every corner corporate office and all the way up to the White House, they are occupying space, power, leadership. But we decided to ask them to share their search for love and to see what happened. We asked American Muslim men, who are our cultural and religious community, what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to love well, to be constant and faithful? What does it mean when you fail at that? How do you move forward after you've made a mistake or broken someone's heart or had your own broken? And they told us. Stories began to pour in from around the nation, from small towns, from cities, from young men, from older men, from men who subscribe to orthodox, cultural, or secular perspectives on religion. And this is one of the few spaces in these 2 books where orthodox, cultural, and secular Muslims can bear witness to each other's lives and each other's stories. So in this book, we've selected 22 stories to share with you. And we're going to share our book trailer first so that you can see all 22 of our contributors. And then we'll be introducing 4 of our contributors who are here tonight, 2 of whom who have flown in from California to be here. Thank you very much.
And we should mention that this beautiful book trailer that you're about to see was put together by our own contributor, Mohammed Shamma. And he worked tirelessly on it, and we are so thankful that he was so talented and put this together for us.
Fighting broke out overnight between rival factions along the Israeli-Syrian border.
I have a dream that one day you and I can see each other between the black and white in our eyes. I have a dream that she might give me a chance until she does. dream that we could dance in the street and all the righties wouldn't mind the kids with 2 left feet. I have a dream that all the monsters and the men that preach hate would hide away in a cave or shut up and say.
Okay, so I'll be introducing our writers one by one. Our first writer is Dan Oversaw. He is a Boston-based doctor of religious studies and pop culture scholar who's, he writes both academic and creative works across a variety of media, lectures nationally on the engagement of pop culture and religion, and teaches throughout the greater Boston area. The Atomic Reform Jewish family of his childhood now also includes Catholics, Presbyterians, Mennonites, agnostics, atheists, and of course Muslims, all of whom get along just dandily. Dan?
Hi. Hi. So the passage I'm going to read focuses on my time actually in Washington, D.C., a very odd place to fall in love, probably a very odd place, period. At this time, I had gone there for graduate school and was sort of treading water and didn't know what I was doing next. All I knew is that I often found wisdom from Morgan Freeman. Until Muna, I had been in retreat. I had been thinking of leaving grad school, of going home to Boston. Life outside of my college cocoon had rubbed me raw. It was all the usual stuff, I suppose. Working for an income, living on my own, having no social safety net. What made it especially hard for me was the well-hidden, very shameful anxiety disorder that I had been combating since adolescence, a crippling panic that would sometimes grab me, the frenzied loss of control that plagued me. Over the years, I immersed myself in film, books, television, and popular culture as a method of casually combating it, but it was too big and too daunting to maintain so far from home. It left me safe nowhere and comfortable with no one. With such a primal fear always ready to erupt, it was difficult to feel fully human. I explained my anxiety disorder and sadness to Muna using film metaphors. I likened myself to Jack Nicholson in As Good as It Gets, as a man whose mind got in the way of his search for happiness. I returned, of course, to Morgan Freeman, this time as Red in The Shawshank Redemption, paralleling how the various strategies I'd crafted to avoid panic attacks left me as trapped as his institutionalized man. I never thought I would be free of it, and if I ever was, I didn't know who I would be. I chose not to hope, because as Red warned, hope is a dangerous thing. Hope can drive a man insane. Muna was calm, compassionate, and direct. I couldn't retreat, she told me. I had to keep pushing. Her friendship and later her affection became inspiring. Her faith, too, encouraged me. Her beliefs were a personal experience for her. Rather than being defined by mosques, alcohol, or pork, Muna demonstrated the power and effervescence of Islam. God may not be within us, but the divine can connect intimately with that which is within us. She never proselytized, never foregrounded her religion in any of our interactions. It was her example and depth of thought that compelled me to reach for more. Too afraid to get in a car, I would ride my bicycle all the way to her apartment on cold nights. I would confide in her things it had taken me years to tell friends. From this, I felt stronger. As Jack's character said in As Good as It Gets, she made me want to be a better man. And like Shawshank reminded viewers, in addition to being a dangerous thing, hope can also set one free. Thank you.
Our next reader is Ahmed Akbar. He's a grad student here in Harvard in Islamic Studies. He writes about race, class, South Asian and American Muslim history, and the notion of Islam as a vehicle for social justice. He enjoys dreaming about writing comedy, learning to play music, 8-bit punk rock, color, language, comic books, exploring his family history, and cooking.
What that all basically means is I'm a nerd. Okay, so my story is basically a reflection on my parents' wedding and marriage. And so I'm just going to start right from the beginning and relate my parents' story as much as I can get in these 3 minutes. This subsection is called Love Story 1975. The day before they fly to America, Chacha and Rani marry in the living room of Rani's childhood home. The party is small by Pakistani standards, perhaps 25 people. Of fiery, brave Rani's family, the core is in attendance. The 2 junior sisters hover in plain shalwar kameez, colored dupattas thrown hastily over their shoulders. The 2 boys lumber in the corner, hands in trousers. It is a sober affair. Rani's father had threatened to cancel the wedding. Like many Pakistani men of his generation, he left centuries of tradition post-partition. Prior to 1947, the majority of his clan had lived near a Sufi shrine in East Punjab. Violent sectarianism scattered that history throughout West Punjab. Given all he had lost, he hoped that his children would marry within the family, as he had done. It was improper, he insisted, for Rani, a fine Urdu-speaking descendant of sheikhs and the clan's first child of Pakistan, to marry a country Punjabi like Chacha. Somehow he acquiesced, perhaps seeing the fire mirrored in his eldest daughter's eyes. Quiet, loyal Chacha was not so lucky. His family had also left their land and livelihood in East Punjab. But unlike Rani's scholarly urban ancestors, there were wealthy rural landowners who married others of their own caste. His sister and each of his 5 older brothers had married Rajputs of the family's choosing. Chacha did not believe that Islam contained anything like caste. As the youngest, perhaps he thought he could get his way, but the discussion was short and uncomplicated. We do not approve, and we will not attend. Chacha did not attempt to convince them. It was the first time he had disobeyed his mother and elder brothers. In a version later told by Rani, Chacha was locked in a bathroom the morning of his wedding, broke out through the window, and took a bus to the ceremony. Chacha laughs and calls it a total fabrication, except for the bus part. His family boycotts the marriage, including his beloved widowed mother. Representing the groom's side are 3 classmates and one of their fathers. All of them will later follow Rani and Chacha to America and become their surrogate family. It sounds depressing, but Chacha smiles and laughs in every photo. Rani, unusual for her, looks demure as a bride. She hadn't had time to find an outfit for the wedding and wears a red lehenga from a recent Eid, adorned with her mother's finest gold jewelry. In Pakistan, a distinction is made between love marriages and arranged ones. Chacha and Rani did not have an arranged marriage, but when asked why they married, their answer does not mention love. Instead, we were partners. Thank you.
Our next reader is Mohammed Samir Shamma. He was born in 1972 to an Egyptian father and an American mother from La Mesa, Texas. His father died when he was 9, and his mother raised him and his younger brother in Houston. Mohammed holds a Master of Arts degree in Middle Eastern Studies from UT Austin and a Master of Information Management and Systems degree from the University of California, Berkeley. During the day, Mohammed writes code intended for computers, but at night, after his 2 kids, Kareem and Layla, are asleep, he writes and illustrates stories. You can see his work at mohammedshamma.com.
Thanks, Ayesha. So, I just want to say, yes, it was a bit awkward being raised by my mom, not having a father. And the piece that I'm about to read kind of represents how I have these moments in life where I overcome from a little bit of awkwardness, and I meet someone like my wife. You're Heidi, right? I said as I watched her come out of the classroom. Hi, I'm Mohammed. I sit behind you. What's up? She said in a casual manner. All of a sudden, I wasn't prepared. 5 years of college, yes, 5 years. And now I didn't have anything to say. The words were locked up inside me. I fumbled for a key, but I couldn't find one. Instead, I tried to pick the lock with the closest object I could find. That's a nice necklace. Where'd you get it? Thanks, she said softly. She made a motion to cover it, but her hand backed away. It's the goddess Isis. My mom got it for me in Egypt. Her pharaonic charm was working on me. Even before she opened her lips. I didn't know what that ancient Egyptian god was, but the shy, downward-gazing statue on her neck guided me, like a pair of wings. Her hands were right to be cautious. I was trying to read her and translate my feelings into meaning. That's cool, I said. I wanted to know where she came from. I was trying not to trip over myself and blurt out the question. What'd your mom like best about it? Oh, she knew I liked Egypt. No, but what did she like about Egypt? Did she like the pyramids? Did she go for the mosques? What are you talking about? We're from Egypt. She wasn't a tourist. You idiot, I said to myself. Here I am, outside a class on Middle East history, and I'm acting like I don't know where the brown-skinned, curly-headed girl with the Isis necklace is from. I had to play it off. No way, that's so cool. Where are you from in Egypt? Cairo. Yeah, but we're in Cairo. You know Cairo? I know enough to get lost. Ah, wrong words. Better in my head than on my lips. It's technically outside of Cairo. You wouldn't know it. Try me, I said. Mariuteya. The name of the canal street rolled off her tongue in perfect Egyptian Arabic. She was legit. Mariuteya? I said as I struggled with the Arabic pronunciation. That's where I was this summer. My uncle lives on that street. You lived on Mariuteya Street? It's true. He lives next to the mosque, on the west side of the canal, near the KFC parking lot, 500 feet from Faisal Street. Impressive. I gave her my phone number and said we should hang out for coffee sometime. Sounds great. And she knelt down to get something out of her backpack. To my surprise, she tore the corner page off her notebook and wrote her real phone number down for me. and we've been together ever since.
Our final reader tonight is Sam Pierstorff. He received his MFA in creative writing from California State University, Long Beach. He went on to become the youngest poet laureate ever appointed in the state of California when he was selected to the position in 2004 by the city of Modesto. He currently teaches English at Modesto Junior College. His debut poetry collection, Growing Up in Someone Else's Shoes, was published by World Parade Books in 2010. And most recently, he edited More Than Soil, More Than Sky, The Modesto Poets, which reached #1 on Amazon's poetry bestsellers list upon its release.
Oh, I'm try something new. Assalamu alaikum. And astaghfirullah in advance. I'm going to start by taking a selfie. And so if you do not want to be in this selfie, you need to duck. But I have a very active Facebook page. I'm from California, and people are very proud that I'm able to come to this great city. So here it comes. Okay. Hold on. Hold on. You got to pretend that you love me. You can photobomb all you want. Okay. My mission is complete. So I just want to say thank you so much to these brave women for publishing these books and really generating lots of long-needed conversation. This is the last leg for me of this little tour. They will continue on and on and on, but I am done. And in honor of that, I'm going... Not that I wouldn't want to, but I have kids and a family and a job. So I'm going to go ahead and I planned to read this in advance, a couple pieces here, and then I noticed, and I'm not going to direct my attention, I noticed some children in the audience. So there's some raunchy little parts, so I'm just going to go like this, and then that means earmuffs. Okay, because I noticed he's filming with his little iPhone, so. And to all the aunties, I apologize also. So let me give you a quick history by reading my just introductory paragraph. Go ahead. Ask me if I'm Muslim. It's true. I am. I'm white. Orange County MTV reality show white. Beastie Boys circa 1986 white. The skater boy Avril Lavigne was talking about white. Now, if you ask me how I came to be Muslim, I will need more time. Enough to tell you the long story about a Syrian girl from Aleppo who met a Kentucky redneck in the heart of Tennessee. Don't ask me how they got there. But I was born of that union, and so was my beloved brother. They soon got divorced. And my mother raised us basically alone as best she could. So I'm fast forwarding. By 5th grade, the back burner could no longer contain the flames of my did you get that on tape? Can we take that back? Cut here. By 5th grade, the back burner could no longer contain the flames of my parents' marital problems. They split up. Our home went up in smoke. Poof, gone. My father moved an hour westward toward the ocean while my mother raised 2 boys alone in the desert of Riverside County, California, with all the might left in her 4-foot olive frame. She jarred my brother and me awake for dawn prayers and chauffeured us to the mosque on Fridays in her seat beltless 1962 Studebaker as she tied her hijab in the rearview mirror and asked my brother to steer. Above all else, she taught us the 5 essential pillars of Islam. 1, believe in Allah and His final prophet Muhammad. 2, pray 5 times a day. 3, don't look at girls. 4, don't speak to girls. 5, don't think about girls. So I'm going to fast forward to high school. As we got older, it became harder for my mother to control us. And this is the astaghfirullah part that is the most embarrassing part for my wife. And so, but it's the truth and it's honest, and that for me is what this book is about. So, not quite yet, but earmuffs soon. In high school, I learned the fine art of dry humping, gene-on-gene friction so hard and fast, I worried we might make a fire between our thighs. I knew intellectually that I was breaking countless rules of pious Muslim behavior by giving into lust, but it was like playing a game of chicken with God. How far could I walk toward the edge of the cliff without falling? I was young and horny. Enough to dip my toes past the edge, but strong enough to avoid falling from grace and permanently injuring myself. That was the game I've balanced that I played, and I was winning. I never unbuckled or cut the ropes that tethered me to God. Loosened them a little, but never cut them completely. The fear of sex that my mother introduced into our young minds stuck with me most of my life. Allah seemed pretty forgiving according to the khutbahs I heard. But in our house, sex was unforgivable, a one-way ticket to hell, and I didn't want to board that plane. Looking back, fear and guilt may have saved me from drowning in a world of high school sex and the side effects that came with it, but there were still side effects. And that is where an American dad can help. It had been months since we last spoke, but I needed his advice. Hey, Dad, it's Sam. Howdy, Chief. How's your mama? That's how he talks, by the way. Fine, brother. Studying. How about you? My balls are killing me. What do you mean? It feels like I got kicked in the nuts. Everything down there hurts. My stomach is sore. I can hardly stand up. Sam, I'm gonna ask you something and you gotta be honest, boy. Don't worry, I ain't gonna tell your mother. Okay? Have you been getting a little hot and heavy with your girlfriend? A little? Did you go all the way? No? Well, there's your problem. What? You're backed up. Ever shake a soda bottle with the cap on? It wants to burst, don't it? Yeah? Well, right now, that soda bottle is your dick. Oh. It's gonna take a while to settle down, son, and if it doesn't stop hurting an hour, go rub it out. I knew what he meant. He understood male plumbing. I had a genital clog and two options: be patient or beat off. I should have prayed, dropped 2 rak'ah to ask Allah for forgiveness and sabr. That's patience. Minutes later, I relieved myself and took a long nap afterwards. I later read that I had experienced blue balls. Epididymal hypertension for you Harvard types. Or vasocongestion. Unlike unicorns and leprechauns, blue balls are real.
What a perfect ending. So we're going to go, first of all, thank you so much to all our readers. So these are just a sampling of 4 of the 22 stories in our book, and we're so grateful for all of you. We'd like to open it up to questions and answers. Does anybody have anything they'd like to ask the writers about their own writing journeys, their decision to contribute to the book, or even if you have questions for Ayesha and myself, we'd be happy to take your questions. And I can start off. Oh, would you like to start? Go ahead.
Is there anybody, any of you don't want to read this book?
So I'm gonna repeat the question. Was it? I'm just repeating the question for the camera. Is it? Was there? Is there?
Is there anybody, any of the authors don't want to read this book?
Oh, any of the authors not want to read the book? Someone in their lives. Yeah.
my mother, who is prominent in the first half of this book and has not yet read it, but sees things on my Facebook and keeps asking me, "Where do I get this book?" I said, "I don't know. You have to come to Harvard Law. It's really hard to find that book." So, inshallah, she doesn't find it.
I want everyone to read it.
A lot of the people that I was worried about reading it are in this room right now, and their response has all been positive. My father was another person, but he actually has been really supportive, and he's bought like 15 copies for all his medical school friends, so that's been very nice.
Yeah, I can only think of who I want to read it, want to have read it, and that's in the future. I want my daughter to read it. I want my kids to know how their father felt about their mother once upon a time, and enduringly, and still.
Do you have any other questions? Here's a question that is always interesting to me and Ayesha. It's, why did you decide to participate in this anthology?
Well, like my short bio said, I spend most of my time writing for computers. No reaction. It's not fun. You stare at a screen. You go to meetings where people are on the other side of the screen, not face to face. So at night, that's where I dream of moments like this.
I want to add that growing up Muslim, and maybe some would agree, there seems to be two standards of behavior, either perfection or hell. There's no middle road that's discussed often enough. And so this story has really helped me find that middle road and admit to some faults, some weaknesses, and maybe I'll be judged, but I'm strong enough now in my 30s with 3 children and a wife who I love, who's also at the latter half of the story. I feel like you can't prevent judgment. You can only prevent how you react to that judgment. And I'm sort of done and over it and moving forward. And so it's very cathartic to be able to sort of spill the beans a little.
So I had read the first one and I really enjoyed it because it, opened my eyes to a lot of different stuff, a lot of different perspectives that I wouldn't otherwise have access to. I don't know if I would have done it straight out if I had just seen it, but I already had the call, but I already had a piece that I was writing basically about my parents because, I didn't mention it, but major part of the story is about my mother's passing, and so it was a way for me to process that understanding and relate it to my own life in the future. So I was already writing that, and I think my parents' story is very interesting. I think it's very inspiring to me. And I wanted to share that story and also put it together in a full piece for myself so that I could, think about it over the years.
Yeah, I think for me, it was a way to think about and talk about not only my love for my wife, but also think about my conversion, which are separate things to me, truly. Even though my wife set and sets a wonderful example of Islam, I separately came to it for myself long after we married, even after we had a child. So, as I think you said in your opening comments, you created a space that was safe for me to explore both of these things and more. So that really was compelling and cathartic to do.
Yes?
Are there any other topics that you consider, any other storylines that you discarded, or when you guys were writing this is exactly what you wanted to know?
Yeah, so the question is, were there any other storylines that you considered writing about and discarded during your writing process? How did you come to choose this particular storyline?
So, my story actually is 5 little stories. And I came to those 5 little stories because I was getting near the deadline and not finishing any of them. So I overcame that with an overarching theme, which you'll see in the story itself. So I'm very thankful that I figured that out.
Yeah, when I was drafting this, I had things that I cut out eventually, and I'm glad I did because they weren't pure for the story. I did get off in the original drafts of this on tangents about my adolescent Jewish education and about how disaffected I was by it. Not by Judaism, please understand, but by the particular religious education that I got. And for too long, I thought I was against religion. And I thought I was not down with Judaism. And that was further proved to me by the unsuccessful relationships that I had with Jewish girls, who are lovely. Who are sweet and lovely, but none of them would be my wife. I did end up cutting both of those thoughts out because they felt negative. They felt dividing, particularly because one of the reasons I was drawn to Islam is its inclusivity. And it felt like I was going against the spirit of the thing by bringing up bad relationships and prior disgruntlement with religion.
Yes.
I think that you were quite funny when you were talking.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we read your story, it would sound as funny.
It's even more hilarious when they kick ass.
Oh, wow. Have you ever thought about doing something like tour or talking?
So the question is if Sam has considered a stand-up comedy career.
Of all the ways to an illustrious career and financial stability, stand-up comedy sounds like the #1 idea. But no, alhamdulillah, I have a full-time job teaching English, and I'm able to, be funny, I guess, in the classroom, and my kids think I'm hilarious. My wife does not. Not even a little bit. So, I do write other things. I write poems, and, God willing, someday, my full-length manuscripts, in other areas will get published, and I'll have opportunities like this. But straight-up stand-up comedy is not a route for me.
Not straight-up comedy. Stand-up comedy. It's more like, like talking tours or...
Yeah, well, next, I'm touring with this, and inshallah, someday when Love Astaghfirullah comes out, I'll be on that tour. And as this series progresses with new themes, inshallah, I'll come to everyone.
Yes, over here we have a question.
Yeah, I've read sections of both books, but I haven't actually read either of them all the way through. I intend to correct that. But I actually had a question for you ladies who have put this project together. Are both books, I know the first book comes from a female point of view, and the second book is more from a male perspective. Do either one of them delve into queer territory?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a space you guys are interested in exploring in your future?
Sure. So the question is for Ayesha and myself. It's whether either of the books talk about have queer stories, stories by queer writers, and both do. We have 2 women in the first collection who are lesbian, and we have 2 writers in this collection who also identify as queer writers. And I mean, the incredible thing I think about the pieces in both collection is just the difference in perspective, even religious identity, perspective, relationships with family. It's really eye-opening, I think, for us as editors, and I think for a lot of the people who pick up these books. I think this is one of the first collections where you see, as Ayesha mentioned in her opening comments, often in the Muslim community we're so siloed into the ways in which we practice Islam, whether we identify as Orthodox or cultural or secular, or even LGBTQ issues, they're very much siloed, can often be siloed. And so this collection was beautiful because we brought people from all perspectives and backgrounds together in one collection. And even within our LGBTQ writers, there's incredible diversity. Yes.
I don't want to delve too much into that, but so I mean, I appreciate that there was a lot of different kind of stuff that went to an all-women's college. This is like really close to my heart. I have that kind of inclusion in the book. But did you get a lot of flack for it? I mean, I know it's a very small community that's more accepting or at least tolerant than the rest.
Mm-hmm. So the question is whether or not we received any flack for the big tent sort of trying to be inclusive. So I will pass that to Ayesha.
When we handed the manuscript out for the first book, some of our advanced readers warned us that there would be a backlash, and we sort of had to take a step back and think about what that could mean. But I have to say that we eventually went forward with the decision to publish Love Inshallah with the full belief and confidence in our community, our Muslim community, that the Muslim community is mature enough to engage with these issues and is actually waiting to engage and wants to engage with the issues that we brought up in both books. And that confidence was absolutely reflected back to us with overwhelming support for both books. I would say that there were definitely some people in communities within, that were not as supportive, especially, not even, interestingly enough, not even around LGBTQ issues as much as premarital sex. So when the stories around that came out, especially in the first book, I think there was more, there was discomfort with that, and in some cases pushback around that. But I would say that overwhelmingly it's been positive, and a lot of people have sort of told us that we've been waiting for this, these stories to come forward, for this book to come out, so that we can begin engaging in these conversations in our families, in our communities. It's provided a safe space for people to begin addressing the issues that are raised here, and there are very joyful and passionate and creative and beautiful stories, and there are also stories that are quite serious about the issues that we need to face as a community, including homophobia, racism, sexism, many other issues. I think what's been interesting for Nura and I, having edited both of the books, is the different reception to the male and female book. So with the book, Salaam Love just came out last week, so it's still quite early in the game, but whether it's because men do still have more space to talk about sexuality, and there's been a very positive response from the community and a real lauding of many of the male writers, saying it's fantastic that you're talking about sexuality and bringing up these issues, and these are real issues and we need to discuss this, whereas I feel like there was more pushback against the women who brought up those topics. Now, it's been 2 years since the first book came out, so it could be that because the first book came out and we have an ongoing website called loveinshallah.com where people can submit stories, that there's a sort of space that's been created to have these conversations more openly, or if it's because in all communities, regardless of religion, men do have more space to claim their sexuality than women do. I think that's an open question.
Yes.
I just wanted to bring up a point that Islam promotes when the kids become baligh, which means when the girl has her period and a boy is whatever, 15, 16, they should be married, and it promotes a monogamous relationship, and you're not supposed to live that long. And we're maybe forcing our kids to wait a long time, and hormones kick in, and it is unnatural. And we kind of shush it under the rug, and we don't talk about it, and we tell our kids to rise above it, and we make it very rigid and black and white, and nothing says black and white.
Right.
Islam is not only the only culture that's very black and white. There's a lot of black and white in the world, and we forget that we have to move towards the gray, and I think this is a great effort to move towards that gray. And these kids bring up, not all of them kids. I'm Ahmed's aunt, so I think everybody's a kid.
Thank you.
So, yeah, so I think it's great that our kids have that so grateful to you guys.
Thank you.
Brought this topic out, and sometimes as parents, it's very easy to say, no, you're not allowed to kiss a girl, but we forget what Islam really teaches.
Right. And one of the groups of people we've heard from after these collections. So this comment, I don't know if you all heard on this side, but it was much about how. Yes, we need to be more open about sexuality with children and have conversations. And I think that that's one of the things that we've heard a lot after the books have come out from parents who said that reading these books has made them realize the importance of talking to their children about these issues that are on their mind, that they're thinking about, and that because of this sort of taboo and this shame that we've cast over sex and sexuality, it's really shut down and stifled a lot of conversation. And an interesting story that we heard from the first book is that I was in LA, I was on a local radio show, and I was talking about the collection, and one of our friends was listening with her, I think at the time it was her 13-year-old son, and after the radio show, he had said to his mom, he said, "I thought you said Muslims don't date." And she, instead, she could have very well said, "Yeah, we don't." That's the end of it. But she really used that as an opportunity to say, okay, when you were growing up, before, we could say Muslims don't date, but now you're 13, I really need to explain, well, what does it mean to say Muslims don't date? What's appropriate gender interaction? What is it, you're going to be feeling things, and how do we address that? And sort of opening up that space for him to come and be able to talk to her if he has questions. Yes?
By definition, the writers have imagination. So if the answer to my question, which I'm going to ask, if you don't know the facts, tell me what you imagine would be the reaction in 4 of Muslim countries, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Iran, and Pakistan, if the books were published there, maybe they were, or you did publish or distribute them, what reaction would you expect?
Okay, so the question is, what reaction would we expect if these books were published in Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Pakistan, and Iran?
Right. And if you don't know the answer, imagine.
And if we don't know the answer, we're going to pretend like we do. Ayesha. Okay, no.
Thank you. She always does this. So the books have not been published there, so we're going to use a little exercise in imagination. So first of all, the book was optioned in Indonesia, which is the most populous Muslim nation in the world. And I believe that it's available in its English form. It has not been translated in the countries that you mentioned, but we do know that people have taken copies in and read them and passed them around to their friends. I'll speak a little bit to Pakistan, just saying that the conversations that are happening in Pakistan around sexuality would actually surprise us here in the US. And there's actually a magazine called Che, which talks very openly about a variety of issues that are affecting Pakistani youth there. So the images that we're often presented with of these countries show only one side, and we're actually talking about so many different levels of society and conversation that are happening there. So the short answer to it is there might be some in authority that might not appreciate the book, but for large sections of the population, I believe that these books would be welcomed. And I also think that we do need, we are separating, each of the titles has American Muslim in it for a reason, because this is our cultural and religious community here in this country, and we're interested in having discussions about what's affecting us here, what a Saudi cleric or a Pakistani cleric or other people might think does not really have much relevance for my life personally and for many of the writers. And would any of the writers like to speak to that?
I would just like to say thank you for scaring us all. And secondly, when this does go into an international edition, I would like to change my name to Samir. But I would like to think this opens up a lot of conversation opportunities. And just, anecdotally, where I teach at Modesto Junior College, the Harvard of the West, we have an international program, and there are a couple Saudi students in the audience at our event there Thursday night, and those young men were just beside themselves with joy, to read this, laughing. And so I think Aisha's point is exactly right. The people on the ground will get it, and then, the oligarchy or whoever's in charge will not. And that's sort of par for the course, isn't it? Every regime stinks, but the people are pretty great. I feel that about Syria. I was there a few years ago. Just amazing people, horrible regime, and on, country after country, Muslim and non.
I think we have time. Oh, did you want to? Go ahead.
No, I mean, I was just going to say a little bit similar about Egypt. If you're not talking about Abdel Fattah al-Sisi right now, I think the book will get published.
We have time for, I think, 1 or 2 more questions. Oh, yeah?
Yeah, we should be 2 or 3, I would say.
Okay. Did you? Yes.
I'm thinking that historically, what you're writing about today is no different than what we've probably seen in this country in the last 100 years. At every point, some religion has been and expanded by stories, interactions between families, that this is just another phase.
Yeah.
That should the Catholics, 60s, Protestants probably in the 20s. Everybody's had this instance. It's just another part of evolution.
Right.
Comments?
We've, actually at a number of our readings, we've had great interfaith crowds, and we've been approached after almost all of our readings by people of other faiths who have said that the stories and the struggles of the writers in our books really resonated with them. And one of the most interesting things is for Love Inshallah, our editor at the publishing house was she's Jewish, secular Jew, and she's married to an Orthodox, her husband's Orthodox Jew. And it was really interesting. She said one of the things that struck her so deeply about this collection is that it really mirrored a lot of the relationships and dynamics in her own life and with her own friends. So I think that the themes in these collections are common and universal to everyone. So the question is if anything has changed in their lives since they wrote the pieces.
Fame and fortune. I haven't been to Harvard before. That's been really cool. But being a part of this team, I think similar to what this gentleman is mentioning, it does feel sometimes like we're on the cusp of something. We're having conversations we didn't have. Islam, there's been talk, there hasn't been a reformation or a renaissance. I'm not saying this is, but there's a young core population of Muslims that are very willing to talk about these issues. And if we're on the edge of that, that progressive edge, I'm super happy to be a part of that.
The honest answer, I've been really fraught since I wrote this. What I wrote was honest. What I wrote was true, and I feel good about what I wrote. But it was, for my circumstances, for me, very much a coming out. We talked about queer issues before. I'm married to a woman, so. But the point I'm trying to get at is my conversion to Islam was very intimate, familial. It was no secret, right? But I hadn't before this book, taken any sort of public stage and declared it my identity to other human beings. It was between me, my family, and God. So that's what's changed for me, putting this out there as something of a public statement.
Mm-hmm.
No.
I can say that I had a life-changing experience that made me want to write it, but and I invite you to read my story to learn more about that. But on the other side, it's made me feel more confident. I consider myself a secular Muslim. I'm Muslim by culture, And I've felt more proud to be able to say that to people and not feel like I care about whether or not they judge me.
I guess more of on a personal note. I mean, I'm always talking with my family and about different issues, but I think it's I've continually been trying to share it with different members of my family and open up a conversation about the past and sort of what it says to us kids in America right now. And I think the response in that sense has been very positive from my family. And especially in particular my father, who's pretty much the center of the story. We spent a lot of time meditating on it. I mean, I spent so much time thinking about fatherhood and dads that I started a Tumblr about it called Rad Brown Dads. And so like that's kind of, I just like have been kind of almost obsessing over the, sort of the subjects over that. I mean, it's been a more personal effect. I mean, thankfully I don't, I'm privileged enough as a man and as, and with the family and community I come from that I didn't have to fear for any repercussions or anything like that. And I think, for a lot of men, it's a easier, it's safer in some ways. I mean, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but like we were talking about with the female collection, it might have been harder to do this if I was my sister's, for instance. So.
I had a comment and then perhaps a question. The comment addresses your statement earlier about this being a form of evolution in perhaps Islam comparable perhaps to Catholicism. And from my perspective, it isn't true. Love and sexuality are human conditions. And as human conditions, they're irrespective of religion, caste, or creed. Our prophet had a love marriage. My grandparents had love marriages. My parents had a love marriage. My three sisters, my brother, and I, through introduction perhaps, ended up in a profound love marriage. So I don't think you can, it's great that these young people are bringing it down to open, and to the uninitiated perhaps it seems as though this is just suddenly opening up. No, it isn't. Homosexuality is actually, when I grew up in Pakistan, it was an acceptable condition. And people didn't talk about it. It was kind of like the Bill Clinton policy of don't ask, don't tell. But it was permissive throughout the country, and it still is. The question I have for you, the editors, is you're right in saying that perhaps us Muslim men are more reticent to talk about this because we perhaps are more cloistered with the immediate struggle of existence, perhaps. But how many first-generation, fresh off the boat immigrants volunteered, or did you solicit any, as opposed to these young men who are obviously raised in the West?
So the criteria we had for the book was we wanted stories where people self-identified as American and self-identified as Muslim. So we received stories from men who consider themselves both. So the doors were open if recent immigrants wanted to write and they considered themselves American, we were happy to have their stories. So in the first book, we had several women who actually moved to the United States as teenagers, but they considered themselves American and they were welcome to write. In this collection, I do think we have one or two writers who are immigrants to the United States. So it was welcome, but we wanted people, within, I think, both the United States and within the Muslim community, we often have labels that we place on each other about who is or who is not American, who is or who is not Muslim, and we really wanted to change that in this collection and have people claim their identities.
And I just wanted to comment on what you said before that, which is a wonderful insight and something that we really agree with, that these books are a challenge to the single narrative about Muslims. And all of these perspectives have existed at all times, and yet there is only one story told repeatedly about Muslims again and again and again. And I think we have to ask why. What is the power? This is all about the power of words. Who holds that power? Who holds the power to label and define Muslims? And so many stories have been told about Muslims, about Muslim men and women, and we very strongly felt that it was about time that we start telling our stories ourselves. So these books are really a testament to the diversity within the Muslim community. We feel like it's a mirror that we're holding up to our community, a celebration of their diversity and their beauty.
So with that, we will wrap up. Thank you all for coming. We would love to continue the conversation on our website. It's loveinshallah.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, at loveinshallah. Please follow us and get in touch with us after you've read the collection. We love to hear from people and get your thoughts.